All right, class. This is the week that we really start digging in. So I'm excited now to talk about our week 4 topic. We are going to dig into water usage. So we're going to talk about water uses, indoor, outdoor, residential, etc. We're going to talk about water meters, and eventually we're going to get to the second math topic, water volume. Okay, what are the uses of water in California? Which one uses the most water? This is important. Why is it important for us, particularly? Because we need to know how water is used and for what purposes and how much is being used so that we can figure out how to save it and we can prioritize where to focus our efforts, right? It makes a certain amount of sense to go after the areas that are using the most water for the most water savings. I think that makes sense to most of us. Said most a lot in that sentence. All right, types of water use. So, yes, 84% agricultural. That is a staggering number, and it can be somewhat disheartening because we're thinking, well, we work in urban water agencies for the most part, and well, what are we supposed to do about that 84%? It's true, but you can only control what you can control. So for us, we get to deal with this little 8% right here and that 3%. So for the most part, that is what's within our control, okay? That 11%. Now, agriculture is working on things, and we will talk about it a little bit in this class, but it is not our focus. But there are some new technologies, there are some new regulations, particularly during this last drought. The covers got pulled back, and a lot of people found out that agriculture is responsible for a lot of water usage in California, and that became kind of a big deal. So, all right, we will continue on to the types of water usage. A lot of this is what I just said. Um, you know, this is what we can deal with. This is the amount of water that's within our control, right? I mean, to a certain extent, we can tighten up water usage with agriculture, but the fact of the matter is that California does provide a lot of food for a lot of people. Now we can make decisions about which crops should be grown where and how they should be best irrigated. But, food production is hugely important for our survival, but also for our economy. So that one becomes a little bit trickier. All right. Generally, we are going to be dealing with domestic, industrial, public. Those are kind of interesting terms. Those are terms you hear in the industry a bit, right? Domestic water usage. What does that really mean? For our purposes, and I think for most people, that means home water use, right? Residential, whether it's single family, apartment, what have you, domestic. Domestic could also just mean, sometimes we call it domestic versus recycled or domestic versus irrigation, right? That's the domestic service. You'll hear that a lot in the industry. But for us, we're going to really think of that as residential. There is industrial, there is public. I'd like you guys to get used to the term CII, commercial, industrial, institutional. Sort of encompasses both that industrial and public, right? Residential, indoor and outdoor uses, single family and multifamily, okay? Commercial, small office buildings, restaurants, larger businesses, shopping centers, institutional, schools, hospitals, airports, stadiums, universities, right? Think about all of the big facilities that could encompass. Okay, outdoor usage within a residential water account can be huge. It can be 50%, 59%, 60%, 70%. It does vary. It depends on what type of plants you have. It depends on how large the area it is. It depends on the climate, if you're further inland or further towards the coast. It depends whether it's winter or summer. There are a lot of variables in here. So that is kind of a moving target. I don't want you to think that it is always at 59%. But that is sort of the average number that AWWA uses, 59% for outdoor. You can see dishwasher, bath, faucet, leaks, 6%. That's crazy. And that sounds like a very large percentage. But we're talking about everything from a dripping faucet to a foundation leak, right? Underneath your home, potentially, or within your irrigation system. So some of these leaks can just be full on broken pipes, right? And when those go unnoticed, that can lead to quite a large amount of water usage. Also, just things like toilets. You know, people do not recognize that if their toilet is flushing itself because of a leak, it is refilling every, half an hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's quite a lot of water. Same thing with pools, right? Sometimes pools, the floats get stuck and all of a sudden they're constantly refilling themselves. And that can lead to quite a bit of water waste, right? So we can really think of that 6% as water that's not going to a beneficial use. It's just being wasted. You see shower on here, 7%, clothes washer, 9%, and toilet, 11%. So if we're really thinking about indoor water usage, right, our big ones are toilet, clothes washer, shower, and then leak. And I think leak is becoming more and more of an issue, particularly as you see something we're going to talk about later, but AMI, right? Automated metering infrastructure, automatic metering infrastructure. As you see these meters that are taking readings constantly, you start to really see a pattern of leaks emerge, and that makes them more easily detectable. That means that once they're detected, there's a certain responsibility put on the user to fix them. So we'll talk about that more as we continue. But yes, outdoor usage is huge, okay? So during this last drought, you saw all of those turf removal incentives or rebates. You may think of them as, tearing out grass and putting in drought tolerant plants. Ours was called Lawn to Garden in Long Beach, but there's many variations of it. California friendly planting, stuff like that. That's all trying to chip away at this 59% outdoor usage number because it is so huge. So, when we take away the outdoor usage, this is what we're left with inside. So, like I said, toilet of indoor usage, it is 26%. Clothes washer, 21%. Faucets, leaks, it's pretty substantial. So, these are sort of our big ones up here. Again, it's based on usage. Primarily, it is primarily climate. Like I said, if you're inland further where it's a little warmer, you're going to use more water to irrigate. Again, that number can go up as high as 70% of total residential usage. So, water use is typically, now, these days, in the last 10 years, expressed in GPCPD, gallons per capita per day. All right, that's a weird term. What does that even mean? It is essentially gallons per person. Capita means person per day. So gallons per capita per day. This is the total water usage just divided by the population. Okay, that's all that really means. How much water is being used in a particular city divided by how many people live in that city. That's all there is to it. Some people tried to come up with some fancy ways to calculate it, to sort of play with the numbers, but in its purest form, it's just water usage divided by population. So the US average is 172 gallons per capita per day. Why might Southern California's be a little bit higher at 230? Well, it's because of landscaping, and it's because of irrigation. We don't really think about it because we're here in Southern California, and sprinklers, irrigation systems are common. They are the norm. But in a lot of the United States and a lot of the world, people don't have irrigation systems just to maintain, their front and back lawns. That's a little bit unique to us. Places that get a substantial amount of rain, even things like the Midwest. I have family up in Washington State. They don't have sprinklers like we do. I mean, you see it a little bit more now, but traditionally it's not been a thing there. If there's no rain for a little while, their lawns just go brown, and then, a couple weeks later, maybe there's more rain and it turns green again. So we have irrigation standard here. You saw outdoor usage accounts for a ton of water, and that's why our number is higher. It's really as simple as that. It's not that we are, taking longer showers or flushing the toilet more, what have you. It's really related to outdoor usage. And, if a family of 4 has a gallon per capita per day usage of 230, how much of that daily water use would go towards landscaping? Well, if we were to take 4 people times 230 gallons, that is 920 gallons per day. If we were to multiply it by a 65% average, we'll use that as an average, 65% for outdoor usage, then we would come up with 598 gallons per day. That's a pretty staggering number, so something to think about. Time of day and day of week. Absolutely, water use varies. Time of day and day of week are pretty important, right? Because water usage is essentially related to human behaviors and habits. So, at specific times of day and days of week, we are behaving differently, right? In the morning, we wake up, maybe we take a shower, and we head off to work. So, in the morning, you do see a little water usage spike because a lot of people are showering. Same thing when people get home from work, right? Now, maybe they're cooking dinner, they're running their dishwasher or their clothes washer, maybe they're showering then. There's certain human behaviors that dictate our water usage patterns. So, you do see water spikes at particular times. People have said, I've heard it particularly from our sewer side, that at halftime during the Super Bowl, right as it starts, you can see the levels in the sewer skyrocket because everybody has gotten up to use the restroom, right? So that would have a certain impact on our water usage if everybody was flushing the toilet at the same time. That's kind of an odd example, but it's true. You could think of other facets of life where that might apply. On weekdays, you tend to have this sort of lull in the middle of the day where everybody has gone off to work. They're not cooking, they're not watering their lawns, they're not doing these other water usage things. Maybe they're flushing toilets here and there, but it's not a major usage like some of the other things. So you will have sort of a diurnal pattern, meaning a daytime pattern where It's high in the morning and high in the afternoon. It's not as extreme on weekends because fewer people are working on weekends. Climate and season of the year, absolutely. If it's hotter, more people are irrigating, and summer in particular, but even dry spells in winter or hot weather in winter can cause water usage to peak just because people are irrigating more. The type of community and the economy. Water is not the most expensive utility bill that most people pay by far, but it is a bill. And if the economy is down, people do tend to be a little more cautious about, their spending habits, and they will save water because they want to save money. Think about it in other terms too. Um, Restaurants, right? People do not eat out as much if the economy is doing poorly. So the economy can have an impact on water usage. Manufacturing, right? If people are not making enough money to buy a particular product, especially if it was, let's say, a luxury product, that the manufacturing of it will go down during a down economy. And therefore, the water to make that product would also go down. Presence or absence of customer meters. It is absolutely proven that when a customer does not have a meter and they are just paying one flat rate for water, that they will use more. If you're not thinking about it, if you're not billed volumetrically per unit of water, then you will use more. That's just, it's human nature. It's proven. And that's why in California it is now mandatory to have a meter. Interestingly, I mean, most of us in Southern California think, well, of course you have a meter. That's just how it is. But in some places, especially where they're dependent on well water entirely, or, if it's a little bit of a wetter climate, they just don't have meters. Sacramento famously did not have meters until very recently. The people in the Pacific Northwest, in Vancouver, Canada, they do not have volumetric billing for water. It's just a very interesting thing. Here in Southern California, we take our sort of lifestyle as the norm, and because water's scarce here, it's been measured volumetrically for quite a long time. But in other areas where that's not an issue, they don't have water meters. Dependability and quality of supply. This isn't kind of an interesting one to bring up, but if your water is not high quality, then you will not be using it, right? If you are afraid that your water will harm you, if you're afraid that your water contains high levels of heavy metals or other contaminants, you're not going to use it. We've seen this somewhat recently, that people have lost confidence for very good reason in their public water supply. Flint, absolutely. So that's not typically something we think of within a large urban water supply, but it is possible that if people, are not sure that their water is dependable or of high quality, that they would use less. The condition of the water system, and eventually water conservation. Yes, water conservation will absolutely have people using less water. What do we mean by that? We mean education. We mean perhaps rebate programs. We mean all of the things that we're going to talk about in this class, all of the strategies to get people to conserve water. Well, I guess I need to clean out my desk. So, next up, we have climate and season. Since most residential use is outdoors, climate and season can have a large effect, right? We already discussed this. I will post it up for you guys if you want to read all the details. But yeah, metering, right? This is a traditional meter, an analog meter, And then this looks like it has an antenna going on for an AMI situation. We will talk about this more. When we talked about metering, what about multifamily, right? I live in an apartment. I don't have my own water meter. I really don't know how much water I use. I'm pretty sure it's a small amount since I don't have any outdoor irrigation. And I am very conservative with my indoor water use. I better be, right? Um, well, I don't know. I really don't. So there are, let's see, 5 units where I live, with 5 different individuals living in them. And the best I could do is, take our total water usage, which is a bill that my landlady gets and I never see, and divide it by 5 and sort of figure out what I use. But that's not a very accurate measurement. So, let's say maybe I am using more water than I think I am. If I had that information, if I knew that, oh my gosh, I'm using, 10 billion units a month and that's just a crazy amount for one person, I'd really better cut down. That could be useful. However, if you don't have a meter, you don't know. This is some more information about dependability and quality, as we discussed a little bit already. And that is it for this lecture. But there's going to be another one, so stay tuned. Keep on working your way through the module, and we will get there. All right.